Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
When can you hear me?
Chip asked if you could hear him.
Yeah.
Did somebody say something a second ago?
I asked if you could hear me.
When you lean back,
You
we
need to
can.
turn up the volume, Chip.
Can you hear me now?
Not very well.
I've got my volume all the way up.
It takes about 30 minutes.
So I'm worried about Sunday.
Well, if you lean up, you're better. Or sit closer.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Here's my microphone.
Sit tall. Oh, no.
Yes.
You're in charge of that side.
So do you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll do it this way then.
Chip's leading worship next Sunday. That's why he's testing his volume.
Morning.
Morning, everyone.
Morning, Sue.
Morning. Are we on? Brent, I have guests at our house. Can you tell? John and Ann Raines from Iowa.
Hello.
Morning.
Morning.
Hello.
They came to be part of the tree planting ceremony for Brother Dan and his friends this afternoon. Oh, there she is.
This one.
Morning, David Mills. Happy birthday to you yesterday.
Thank you.
I guess you had a party, sort of, huh?
Dinner anyway.
All right.
Well,
Hi,
I've been-
Megan.
Hi, how are you? I'm sorry I couldn't make it last week. I couldn't seem to get my head together about the password and the timing and
Oh,
everything.
Well,
Sorry.
good for you for showing up this week.
Well, we're trying to do some intervisitation. It's so exciting.
That's right. Well, Megan, introduce yourself to people so they know who you are.
I'm a member of Wellesley Friends Meeting in Massachusetts, and I am I've had made several trips to Cuba in my life, although not since 2012, I think. And I met Dale and Sylvia on FUM trips to work on the projects in Oldeen or Hibara,
Yes,
or both. I can't remember. And they're wonderful people, and I'm always glad to be in the room with them. So thank you.
Nice to have you with us.
Well, again, welcome everyone, and we may have others who join us. I would remind you to put your microphone on mute, except when you're going to speak because of the feedback. That will help with that. Are there joys or concerns to share while we're together?
Just continued concerns and prayers for all those in leadership positions having to make very, very difficult decisions right now.
Well, again, welcome. Let's enter into a time of silence. And I'm the worship leader, so when I feel led, I'll share some thoughts. And then during open worship, if you feel led, just unmute yourself and speak. Well, like many of you, I'm finding that I spend even more time on the interwebs, as a friend of mine calls them, than I used to. And I spent a lot of time anyhow. I like I like the idea of the interwebs instead of the internet, the web of connection that we have. Certainly, we wouldn't be able to do this without the miracle of technology, which is a wonderful thing. And I've noticed, even though we're staying at home and self-quarantining, in some ways I'm as busy as I ever was, with meetings, and it's just all happening this way. I was emailing with a friend the other day, and he was saying he's completely overwhelmed in this underwhelming time. uh, and there's so much going on. And we're hit with so much information, and what is true, what is not true. And one of the things that I do that I know is probably a guilty pleasure, is I'm on Facebook, and I'm on Twitter, and I'm on Instagram. Instagram I like mostly because of all the photographs, and people tend to be a little nicer there, I think. But on Twitter and Facebook, there's so much rancor. People just not being nice to one another. I mean, I know there's so many stories of goodness in this world, especially in the midst of this crisis. But we seem in some ways also to becoming more polarized, and I wonder if that's because we're not doing things face to face. It's a lot easier to be snarky at a remove than if you're in the room with somebody. When you're with somebody, you tend to be kinder, I think, and or at least have the ability to work through things instead of just post something. And I read these words of Paul this morning, and I need them. It's in Ephesians 4:32. He says, "Be kind and compassionate to one another." And I was thinking about that when I read some of the posts. I have friends who are all over the political and socio-economic landscape. And so as I read some of the posts and people kind of pushing back at one another in mean ways, I was reminded of one of my favorite movies, which is the movie Harvey with Jimmy Stewart and his big 6-foot tall invisible rabbit, a puka as it was called. And at one time in the movie, Stewart's character, Elwood P. Dowd, is being committed to a mental institution, a sanitarium. And the doctor is surprised that he's not outraged. And he says, so why aren't you upset? And Elwood P. Dowd says, years ago, my mother used to say to me, she'd say, in this world, Elwood, you must be, she always called me Elwood. In this world, Elwood, you must be oh so smart or oh so pleasant. Well, for years I was smart. I recommend pleasant. You can quote me. And as I reflect on my own life, I think of how many times I have needed to be oh so smart and to respond in ways that weren't always kind, in ways to prove a point that I thought I was oh so smart on. And often those kind of responses were hurtful, I see now, to other people. It belittled them. And so in this time, even as difficult as it is for me not to respond when I see something that I think is completely fallacious or stupid, in my judgment, to respond with sarcasm, which I'm good at. And I didn't say that sarcastically, or snark. But how can I be a kind presence? It doesn't mean I don't have opinions. It doesn't mean that I don't stand for what I believe is right or offer my opinions, but how I do that seems to be extremely important in this time. I read this in Britain's Faith and Practice. Clifford Hay said this, we need not go to the ends of the earth to find opportunities for ministry. We need not be young, clever, fit, beautiful, talented, trained, eloquent, or very wise. We shall find these opportunities among our neighbors, as well as among strangers, in our own families, as well as in unfamiliar circles. Magnificent opportunities to be kind and patient and understanding. This is a vocation just as truly as some more obviously seen as such. It's the vocation of ordinary men and women called to continual, unspectacular acts of loving kindness in the ordinary setting of everyday life. How possible it might become by the grace of God. the vocation of ordinary men and women called to continual, unspectacular acts of loving kindness in the ordinary setting of everyday life. I need to remember that's perhaps my calling in this time. It's not quite the same as being oh so pleasant, but it's pretty close, I think, in good ways. To be a representative of God's love and light in this world where there's so much darkness and vilification of each other. And another thing that helps me do that is to try and remember to keep a sense of humor about things. It's hard in dark times. It's easy to find dark humor in dark times, but to look out for good humor. Quaker Faith and Practice, again from Britain, says, keep a sense of proportion and a sense of humor. One of my favorite things to do now is to watch YouTube and watch a little dog named Pluto, which is completely stupid, but Pluto gives absurd advice all the time, and it's just this talking dog. I don't know how they do it, but this goofy voice is always giving advice to the two-leggeds, as he calls us. He did have to put a disclaimer up because some people were taking it seriously, but to find those moments of humor and beauty in everyday life and to rejoice in them and share them with each other. Not the mean kind of humor that divides, but the kind humor that unites. There's so much goodness in the world around us, even in these days. So much room for us to be kind, to be gentle, to laugh with one another. A writer friend of mine, Christine Waltner's Paintner, wrote the following prayer, and I'll close with that. God of surprises, infuse me with your wild wonder. Sustain me in the daily practice of opening my heart to grace. Expand my imagination to see more widely than before. Open my heart to experience. Open my heart to experience compassion beyond my dreams. Call me to begin again and again. The words of Paul, be kind and compassionate to one another. Well, friends, it was good to be with you. Norma, we appreciated the dogs' vocal ministry that they shared with us. We could hear them. We probably needed a translator. We weren't quite sure if they were speaking tongues or what, but the joyous sounds of life around us. So does anybody have anything to say before we close meeting? Has anybody heard an update on Ruth Alber, who fell this week? And last I heard, she was back at Westside in rehab. Well, I'll check with Beth and then share what I find out. Thank you all, and hopefully we'll see you next Sunday.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye, Sylvia.
I'm Megan.
Well,
Bye, Megan.
Don and Ann, good to see both of you.